my business background basically is I was very fortunate in one of those serendipitous events where I met a couple of guys in the dormitories when I was an undergrad at UCLA who started a business. And so I sort of tagged along with them and worked with them and was able to sort of get introduced into the business world, and it completely changed the whole direction of my life. I did that for about 7 years. It was a very high-tech company for its day. I mean, computers were just being introduced into business, and that was one of our entrees, was to help them utilize technology for the first time. So I worked with many companies who'd never had computers or automation or anything like that, and that we automated for the very first time. Then I got the opportunity to go to work for a Weyerhaeuser company up in Seattle. One of my MBA school buddies worked there, and they were looking for MBA types to go to work in their information systems area as an analyst. So I took a job there. We moved to Seattle, lived there for 7 years, had a great time, really enjoyed the place, but we ultimately missed the sunshine in Southern California and came back. When I was up there the last 2 years in Seattle, I hooked up with a consulting company who, again, assisted people with automation. And there was a gentleman there who specialized in business and strategic planning, and he had developed a process for small, closely held companies to take them through really what most of them did for the first time, which is develop a formal business plan. Because one of the things that we noticed with all these companies is, in the process of helping them with their automation and their business processes, is how informally I should say, that they did everything, and they had no direction. No one really understood where the owner was taking them. They usually were run and managed by what I refer to as a mad dog entrepreneur, who was typically out of control, very creative, very energetic, very hard worker, but could get the business only to a certain place, and then was not able to get them from the entrepreneurial stage to a more professionally managed stage. So that's where we developed a process where we could take the company through that. So for the first time, we were talking to people inside the company about, does this company have a direction? Does it have a focus? Do you know where it is? Can you articulate it? Can the other people articulate it? Are there issues that are holding the company back that aren't on the table? All those kinds of things. And the partner mentor that I learned this from was extremely good at extracting from people, what I call their deep dark thoughts, what they really thought about the business and what was holding them back or what was holding them back. And some of it bordered on the psychological, but we tried not to get too far into that. I did have a degree in psychology, so I was very well qualified with my undergraduate degree to analyze people. But in any case, I kind of learned that process. We moved back down to Southern California, and I was able to start applying that process by myself without my mentor until I shadowed him for a few times, and then started doing this for companies by myself. I took his process and basically copied it, and then over the years, really the next 20 years, refined it myself. And I've always been a great student of management, so I read everything that came out and all the books and all the guru consultants, and started with people like Stephen Covey and those kind of people who wrote popular books that were supposed to be transcendent or transformative for a business. And the things I liked, I incorporated in the process. The things I didn't like, I left out. And so, despite the fact I didn't have an original idea in there and copied everybody, it still turned out to be my process by the end of it. And then about 1979, I went to work for a CPA firm and began to do this consulting. So I had their clients that I could apply this process to. And one of the things we did for marketing was we just wrote down this process and put it in a workbook. And everybody's first reaction was, well, you don't want to give away all your secrets and put that into a workbook. What you want to do is hook them in and then sell them. And I found just the opposite to be true, which was if we gave them the workbook, they looked at it and said, we can't do this on our own, we need a facilitator. So I really became then a professional facilitator, guiding companies through this planning process. And I wrote it all down, put it in a little workbook. It was nice, attractively, and it was something I was able to hand out to a prospective customer that, gave me a certain level of credibility. They looked at it, they liked it, they usually would proceed. And the process wasn't so expensive that it, sort of represented a major capital investment for the company. And so that's how I cut my teeth on the whole strategic planning process. And then over the years, I just refined it, added stuff to it, came up with new exercises to do, and to where, I was pretty comfortable I could take just about any company through the process. And there were some surprises. There were some companies that were so in such bad shape, near bankruptcy, that I couldn't really help them. Somebody like that. I was best with the healthy companies where, as I said, the entrepreneur had sort of maxed out their ability to take the company to the next level, and they needed somebody to show them the way. And that involved a lot of, I learned that organizational change was more a function of role than anything else, and if people played the right roles in the company, they were able to get it to the next level. So I did a lot of work with defining what role each person in the company played, particularly, what I call the core management team. And the core management team is really the one that, set the goals and provided the focus, and kind of, in some sense, took the entrepreneur leader away as a result of that. So I kept, basically refining that process over and over and over again, tweaking it, and to the point where I had a pretty good understanding of what I was getting into in just about any company. As I think I've said, I did probably about 200 companies over the course of that 30-year period, where we had, formal business plans. So I was doing, a couple a month, being introduced to new customers and trying to, to develop a practice. I did a lot of seminars, where we exposed people to the process, and I almost never gave a seminar where I didn't have 2 or 3 people come up to me afterwards and say, will you come call on us? We're interested in, having you take us through this. I also got hooked up with a lot of the associations in professional society, for instance, the Association of General Contractors and California CPA Society, and people like that who had exposure to lots of, different companies. And so at one point in time, I even taught a class for the California CPA Society called CPAs as General Business Consultants, where we taught the CPA how to fundamentally not to do the planning, but to recognize the signs that were necessary for us to then come in and follow up and develop the plan. Most CPAs aren't adept at, that kind of facilitation. So as I said, I really became more a professional facilitator than anything else with this planning process as, the guidebook for, for both the process that we went through and the products of the plan itself. So if a company if they wanted a fancy, packaged, professional-looking business plan for the bank, for instance, to raise capital, or with investors, we could do that. Or if it was just a process of, trying to identify a direction and communicate that to the rest of the company, we could do that as well. So it was very nice. I began to teach other people in the firm how to do this, and that was very rewarding because they went through the same growth pattern I did, which is continue to mature and be able to give good advice to, to entrepreneurs who typically are pretty demanding when it comes to advisors.